Hi everyone, this is Athar Mansoor from TRACS. In this video, I am going to review for you an interesting article by INSEAD Knowledge, The AI Race Through a Geopolitical Lens. Before I review this article for you, I would request you to kindly subscribe to our YouTube channel, TRACS Pakistan. There is a video series on INSEAD Knowledge, Harvard Business Review, and Chicago Booth Review. All of these three business schools are the leading business schools of the world. And I choose articles from these business schools, and then I review those articles through these video series. So you can find on our YouTube channel the playlists for these three different business schools. So the current article which I'm reviewing for you has been authored by Pushan Dutt, who is a professor of economics and political science at INSEAD. The main theme of this article by Pushan is that a new world order is unfolding as the US, China, artificial intelligence race meets geopolitics. We have heard about Thucydides' trap, which tells us that when a rising power challenges an established power, conflict is inevitable. Graham Allison, one of the former deans of the Harvard Kennedy School, has also written a book, Destined for War: Can America and China Escape Thucydides' Trap? And I have reviewed that book also, and it is available in the playlist on book review series on TRACS channel. And I would request you to please watch that video as well. But coming back to this article, Pushandat says that is Thucydides' trap playing out on the world stage because China is continuously, through its technological ambition, challenging America's standing as a technological powerhouse, and so the conflict might be inevitable, and this continuous challenge by the Chinese to the American technological prowess might play out in the shape of a big conflict. Pushan warns us about, or he tries to explain it through the Chinese rise through history. And he tells us that China's ambition through history has been very clear. And he clearly refers or identifies Mao Zedong's Raise China slogan, and then subsequently Deng Xiaoping's Rich China slogan, and finally the incumbent President Xi Jinping's Restore China as a Global Power slogan. And he says that these three slogans have remained the preamble to Chinese quest for techno-strategic dominance. The author tells us that US is well aware that China's ecosystem has several advantages, but it also knows clearly the vulnerabilities of China's ecosystem. And that is why it has restricted the chip exports to China to curtail its computing and data storage capacities and capabilities, and also to negatively impact strategic sectors in China, such as automobile, telecom, utilities, healthcare, and military. However, Pushan clearly recognizes that export controls for chips have not discouraged the Chinese or demotivated them, but it has incentivized them to innovate. And few recent examples are DeepSeek and Huawei's new chips, which demonstrate that Chinese have used this constraint to their advantage. Pushan asks the question, are these game changers like DeepSeek and Huawei's new chips in the AI race? And he says, yes, the giants are at war. Going into some kind of explanation for AI, which he believes will be a general purpose technology with applications across a wide range of sectors and industries, he says that historically GPTs, or the general purpose technologies, led to the rise of a global superpower or heightened competition among superpowers. And this race amongst the superpowers or the powers of the time, not just hinges not just on technological innovation, but also about the capacity of that innovation within that society, or the innovation within that country, in terms of its diffusion capacity. So this is very important. So not about just innovating something or producing an innovation, but how quickly that innovation is diffused and finally adopted is very important if a country needs to, or if a country is targeting to lead that technological race. Innovation capacity, viewers, is usually depicted through some indicators. For example, the research and development expenditure in an economy, the number of patents filed and granted in that economy, scientific citations, or the investments in that economy. And these indicators are usually objective, quantifiable, and they are measurable as well as visible. And US, from this perspective, has developed the largest number of AI models, which have been spearheaded by big companies like Google, Meta, Microsoft, and OpenAI. They have also shown clearly their investment ambitions. And in 2024 alone, the US tech giants invested more than $300 billion in AI infrastructure. So innovation capacity is very visible in the case of the US, which is almost 6 times that of China as far as investment is concerned. So one indicator or one variable of investment shows that US is much ahead of China. It also boasts of superior infrastructure, where it has 10 times more data centers than China, and it is spending nearly 4 times that of China on AI servers. But the author also tells us that China has different cost dynamics, and to stay ahead in this competition with the US, uh, it has understood that it needs to develop the capacity to deploy and integrate AI in the economy and at scale. And if it is able to do it, then it would be beating the US in this competition. So, from that perspective, China has started an aggressive cloud pricing, and open weight models from DeepSeek and Alibaba have lowered the barriers to entry, especially for SMEs, which are very important for any economy, and especially the Chinese economy. And so this has incentivized these small or medium enterprises to experiment with advanced AI, and that too at very low cost in comparison to the US. So the war is intensifying from this perspective. Professor Veru Chen from China Europe International Business School has also illustrated this fact about the Chinese vibrant AI ecosystem at the INSEAD AI Forum Asia, where he identified that 6 little dragons, Hangzhou's 6 little dragons, which are also known as tech giants such as Alibaba, Baidu, ByteDance, Huawei, and Tencent, are becoming very popular and becoming very powerful in the Chinese ecosystem. In fact, 83% of all Chinese generative AI tools have originated from 6 provinces, which have very powerful and strong, robust, and resilient AI ecosystems. This is actually the geographical distribution of the generalized AI tools developed in China, and you can see 83% are developed in Beijing, Guangdong, Shanghai, Zhejiang, Jiangsu, and Sichuan. So these regions have developed very strong AI ecosystems. As I've told you earlier, it's not about the capacity to innovate and just produce an innovation. It's also about diffusion and adoption. And this diffusion capacity is usually not as visible as innovation capacity, which I have told you earlier in my previous slide, that it is depicted through some indicators which are visible and quantifiable, but diffusion capacity is not easily quantifiable and visible. It's about the proportion of companies using AI, the flow of talent, which is very extremely important between universities, R&D labs, startups, industry as such at macro scale, and government. It also can be seen, or it has to be observed in sectoral adoption rates of the technology, and also finally between the links between frontier firms and application firms and the degree of competition in that economy. So these things which we need to observe in terms of diffusion capacity are challenging. And this is in fact which is leading towards heightened competition between China and US, because Chinese capacity in these four or five variables, or four or five from four in these four or five aspects, is definitely more becoming more day by day in comparison or contrast to the US. So the author also tells us that, in fact, for technological innovation to bring the results for any country, scale matters. And as I've told you, diffusion is taking place in China surely, quietly and surely. And one of the major advantages which China is enjoying is its integrated digital foundations. Platforms which are very popular in China, like WeChat and Alipay, they provide ready-made rails for deployment of AI technologies, bringing consumer receptivity, which accelerates market penetration. The ecosystem is marked by, already I've told you, by lower costs and availability of open weight models. And this lowers barriers and enables rapid scaling, as I have mentioned earlier, in terms of SMEs also, and diffusion, not only across SMEs or industries, but also across consumer and other bigger industrial sectors, large enterprises also. China also has less restrictive data access compared to US and Western counterparts, which has enabled it to move into faster iterations and development of technologies. It also, the centralized structure is also benefiting the Chinese society, because it leads towards more coordinated approach for investment, organization, deployment of resources, and to pivot them where they are required. Also, the government's adoption of AI is very important. And in Chinese case, the government's adoption is sending demand signals to the market, and which is enhancing the scale of the Chinese AI technologies. However, there is a flip side of centralized approach, which the author highlights. And he says that Chinese government's concern with AI's impact on society and the use of censorship can slow down experimentation, because the experimentation for technological diffusion and adoption is very important. And this Chinese approach can also throw sand in the innovation flywheel in the Chinese society. However, author also tells us that to achieve scale, it takes investment, training data, talent, and energy, besides less tangible culture of experimentation, trust, and excitement around the technology, which he sees is increasing in the Chinese society rapidly. Although US is planning an annual investment of about 165 billion into AI, which is going to be around 4 times that of China, which stands at 47 billion, and it also boasts unmatched investments, a deep and distributed talent pool across academia, private sector, industry, and public institutions, and the market-driven integration of AI that facilitates effective implementation. It still lacks availability of that required energy and capacity to build quickly due to several regulatory obstacles in the US. Hence, it had to do an agreement with the UAE to build a fifth generation warfare Stargate AI data center in Abu Dhabi with 500,000 advanced NVIDIA chips. China, on the other hand, the author argues, has the talent, training data, energy, as well as that excitement levels which are required to scale up the technologies. A big question here is, what is the destination of this race between the two giants? Viewers, you must know that diffusion of general purpose technologies takes time, and the productivity boosts arising from the adoption and diffusion of these technologies may not be immediately visible. For example, when a new general purpose technology is introduced, initially the productivity gains can fall or productivity can fall. And before the productivity gains take place, it can be a very long lag or a long period of time. Electricity is a striking example from this perspective because it took 3 to 4 decades to see the productivity boost driven by the invention of electricity. It was not immediately visible. So, supremacy to what end from the perspective of the US? So, the holy grail for the US can be the artificial general intelligence, which is mimicking the human intelligence level. So, as powerful or as robust as human intelligence, and even artificial super intelligence, which can surpass the human intelligence. So, if the US is able to achieve AGI, we are not talking about ASI right now because it is much more sophisticated than AGI. In the next 3 years or 3 to 5 years, China would find it challenging to catch up. But at the same time, the author tells us that China does not blindly follow this development of AG, will not follow this development of AGI. Rather, it will take a very practical approach focused on application, which is aligned with its Made in China 2025 strategy. So it will not just pursue AGI just for the sake of it, rather, it will prioritize solving concrete problems faced by its society, its government, its economy, which can range from healthcare to manufacturing to healthcare. So they'll be more practical, but definitely US will be focusing to lead and become to become a leader in AGI, but China would not blindly follow it. And this Chinese strategy, author believes, can yield real world adoption and impact more quickly in contrast to the US approach. Lastly, I think the author talks about something very interesting. So I started at the beginning of this video, I explained how Thucydides' trap is playing out, maybe. And Xi Jinping also often speaks about Thucydides' trap, where he says that conflict is inevitable because China is challenging US supremacy. But, ladies and gentlemen, there is another important aspect, and there is another trap which needs to be taken care of, and that is Kindleberger trap, which is lesser known than Thucydides' trap. And this trap tells us that where the superpower starts withdrawing and stops providing global public goods, conflict can also happen in many domains. So US is the global superpower, but it is withdrawing and it is stopping itself from providing global public goods. And the author tells us this has the potential to rock the international trading system, the monetary system, peacekeeping, freedom of movement, and of navigation. This trap lies in how the emerging power is not willing to step up and provide these global public goods because these were provided by the established power, which is the US, and maybe China will not step up and provide these global public goods. This is reminiscent of the era just before Second World War when the UK pulled back. It was the established power, but the US did not step up to provide the public good. So we have to be aware of this trap, which is lesser known, as I have mentioned earlier, than Thucydides trap, and it is known as Kindleberger trap. So besides lack of stability in international systems, there is a marked increase in skirmishes and conflict. And we can see that this is materializing on the global stage, ranging from the more benign conflicts or skirmishes in the shape of US banning TikTok and China limiting Hollywood films to the highly consequential conflicts, such as the tariffs, although they are on kind of pause right now, and China's critical mineral export controls and the US ban of NVIDIA GPU exports to China. So, viewers, I think this is a very interesting article, and it has uncovered how um this global race in terms of AI is moving into geopolitical arena, and especially in post-Trump era, where America has withdrawn from the world stage, and this is shaking the foundation of global military alliance. It's not just about dismantling NATO or ignoring international trading rules. The superpowers now are thinking about their spheres of influence. And we see that the US is targeting the Americas, Russia setting eyes on Europe, and China going for Asia. So, at the confluence of this AI race and geopolitics, the author finally uh, finishes or terminates this article by saying that a new world order is unfolding. So thank you so much for watching this second video of the INSEAD Knowledge video series. Again, I would request you to kindly subscribe to our channel to stay updated about these interesting videos, in which I try to explain these fascinating articles through these videos, small videos, and the INSEAD Knowledge, Harvard Business Review, and Chicago Booth Review playlists are available for your viewing. So thank you so much again. Stay tuned for more. Join TRACS.